Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the FRS. We are here for round 8 of this 10-race season, and of course, as usual, kicking off the weekend with PC Division R. We're here in Australia at the Albert Park Circuit, which has appeared in every FRS calendar except for one, which was just Season 3, the only time it's been left off. However, it's a new layout this time around. 5.2 kilometers, just 14 corners, as we've lost to 3 DRS zones, but just 2 detection points. You can see between turns 8 and 9, the big difference at turn 9-10 chicane has been pushed a little bit further back. So look for excitement going on there. Of course, your first action zones are going to be the combination of turns 1 and 2. This first chicane down the front straight DRS zone, the pit straight DRS zone, trying to make sure you can get a good run, because it does send immediately down to the next DRS zone and the next overtaking opportunity. Turn 3 has had the corner reprofiled a little bit. It's a little more sweeping, but still a heavy braking zone and a slow right-hander. Then, of course, turn 11 at the back of the final DRS zone has been changed significantly, a tight right-hander. Now, the 3 compounds of tires, the soft, mediums, and hards. The mediums are going to be 1 second slower per lap than the softs. The hards, 1.6. The soft is the C5 and 2 steps softer than the mediums. In this 29-lap race, the hards can do 25 laps. The mediums will go about 19. The softs, being that extra soft compound, will only go about 10 laps into this particular race. Now we will get ready to rejoin as drivers are just getting their out laps done. And we will pick them all up as soon as Discord decides it decides to show the screen. There we go. So we'll keep an eye out, see who is furthest around the circuit at this point. I believe it might be, indeed, this man right here. Elliott in the Williams today. And he is the furthest one around as far as starting his outlap. We'll jump on board with them and see how they can navigate their way around this circuit. A little scrappy through the final corner. You really want a good run on that exit, but the timer is started and down into turn 1. He goes a little bit wide, and Stark has spun and blocked the pit lane exit and is apparently already out of the session. So Stark will be starting towards the very back of this race. But through the first run through turn 3, now this little infield-ish parking lot section, tricky right-hander in old cars was easy flat. Now you've got to do a little bit of lifting to get around the corner. Now reprofiled significantly is that corner there. And here comes this long run. Usually you'd be slamming on the brakes for turn 9 and 10, but that chicane has been taken out. You continue flat out. That's increased the circuit to 77% of the lap under full throttle. And now turns 9 and 10, this tricky chicane, as it always is. Trying to get that right is where you're going to find most of your time. Now down into the reprofile, old turn 13, now it's turn 11. Much sharper angle on that one. It goes deeper, straighter, it's not as wide, but final couple of corners, as they always were, a tricky right, left, right. And of course, trying to mitigate getting on the throttle and opening up the corner to get around. And it is a fairly decent run down to the start-finish line. Across the line, Elliott will take that first initial flying lap. Ruprath will go next up on the board. We'll grab a hold of Blackbird, who is working their way into the final sector at this point, trying to find their way up the grid there. But Ruprath goes almost a second faster than Elliott on that first lap and goes into the 18.8s. Where is Blackbird going to end up? He is going to cross the line in 19.2, so splits Elliott. False Tax is going to be the next to cross the line. Coming through the, no, he's bailed out of that lap. So we'll jump off of him. Attore working into the final couple of corners. Rear light is flashing, so maybe they bailed out of this lap as well. Nope, they're going to go ahead and finish. So they're just using a lot of ERS. And across the line they go, and they will go a 19.8. On board with our end, who is set to purple sectors in this one. Crosses the line, does go fastest overall onto the 18.1s. We'll see where Dr. Zados is. He navigates the tricky turn 11 it is now. And it doesn't look like he's pushing all that hard, although if he can have a quick final sector, he may be just about just about there. No, he's bailed out of that lap. We'll grab the other Mercedes of Dr. Shizu, who is coming up towards turn 11 now with quite a bit of traffic ahead. A Red Bull and it looks like an Alpine in front. Dan Gilligan has connected to the session, so he will get a chance to jump in a car and go out there. Ruprath has had a disconnection in the pit lane, luckily, so no lost time for them. But here comes Shizu around the corner. DRS is wide open. Gali goes up to P2, so a good lap from Gali. But right now, our end quickest by a margin. Dr. Shizu up into fourth on a 1:19.0. Aerox next across the line. The AlphaTauri, not a representative lap time there, 35.2 for him. I believe it is Coral the furthest around the lap on the out lap here, so he'll be the next to set a valid lap. Fraser is actually just starting his lap, so I'll actually grab on board with the Division 1 leader now. Has an opportunity to clinch that Division 1 championship this week. Needs to Silver Arrow needs to outscore Fraser by 4 points. But it is the first of our divisions that has a potential championship clincher on the cards here, just 8 rounds into this 10 race season. So looking to extend the championship and is Silvero, but also looking to pick up a second championship is Fraser, who's already picked up 1 title to their name as they sweep through this long kind of twisty straight area. Into the chicane, looks relatively tidy. Oh, but a big snap of oversteer as the back end just gets so light over that curving. And Fraser is indeed around. We'll grab on board with Coral. Fraser had set a purple middle sector before that spin, as that sector split is just before the chicane, but was on a lap to potentially take a provisional pole position. And alas, no such luck for Fraser. Coral on a strong lap so far. We'll see they're at the second health check here. They're on a 45.0 at the middle sector split. About 3/10 off of provisional pole that Arendt has set, but most importantly, Coral is safely through that chicane. Ruprecht has had the chance to reattach. Dan Gilligan, not in his typical Alpine seat, is in an Aston Martin today. Down into the final couple of corners comes Coral. Where can they place their McLaren in this one? Crossing the start-finish line, where will they go? And it is good enough for P2. Next coming through is Knack Track, who's just hit the second sector split. A similar track time to what Coral had through the first 2 sectors, about 3/10 the margin. And he's just got to find some time in the final sector. Could go up nearly, but he's running a little bit wide there. Seems to have kept the lap valid. Spike is out of the session. He's had a crash at the start of the second sector there. So he is in the walls and is not going to set a valid lap time. Blackbird also out. I think he has had a crash through the first sector. Knack Track goes P3. Dr. Zados, the next car on a flying lap. He's going to come through and he's invalidated. So having to work his way through several stricken cars at this stage. And, well, a couple of crashes on 1 lap. And we've got a lot of drivers that are not going to set valid lap times. Of course, Stark had that DSQ to start the day. I believe Arend is just starting a lap of his. And we'll jump on board with the provisional pole sitter in the Mercedes. Dan Gilligan has also just started a lap a little bit behind in the Aston Martin as well. So we'll keep an eye on him. He's the dot on the mini-map just behind Arend, who we're watching at this stage. But Arend, ooh, big snap of oversteer there. That is going to be Arend around. We'll grab Dan Gilligan instead then, who has lifted significantly through that corner. Not quite, I mean, it's first run of the weekend, so probably not fully confident in the car just yet. Also maybe doing a double warm-up lap. We have seen in Div 4, Renovatio do the double warm-up strategy quite a bit. So who is on the lap behind Dan Gilligan? Is that Elliott? That is indeed Elliott, who is on a flying lap and now catching both Arend and Dan Gilligan. Arend's going to have to get out of the way of the quick-moving Alpine. He does pull to the right, letting Elliott through. And into turn 11 they go. 119.1 is what Elliott is on now. They've got some opportunity to improve. Seems to be a decent lap. Dan Gilligan a little deep ahead. He's still, setting a lap, but no. Elliott has decided to back out. Is not going to continue with that lap. I believe Shizu is on a slow-ish lap, a 23 at this stage, so maybe a mistake there, but he should be gearing up for a flying lap. We'll jump on board with Hugh Sam in the Alfa Romeo, he's having to let some cars through, so he's likely bailed out of his lap. We'll grab Frazier, who has gone purple in the first sector, purple in the second sector by 2/10, is cleanly through the chicane this time. He's got a car ahead, is going to have to navigate. Who is that? That is the Alpha Tauri, and it is not moving very quickly. Off the line they go. Okay, they managed to get out of the way. It may have cost just a hesitation into turn 11 for Frazier. We'll see if that is indeed the case. It was about 2/10 the margin at the second sector. Easing on the throttle, keeping the back end well under check is the Aston Martin driver. Pulling to the inside, and I think he's lifted out of this lap. And yeah, he crawls across the line and does not improve. He only goes up to a 120.8. He would have, I think, been on track for a potential provisional pole if he had continued on with that lap. Coral is going to be the next to cross. No, Space Ghost has crashed. Space Ghost is out of this section. Let's see if we can get an onboard and see. He's on the exit of turn 5. Wide is Air Rocks, and that is definitely a spot where you're going to lose the rear of the car quite a bit. And so we've now had 4 drivers crash out of this qualifying session. Air Rocks had to be kind of tentative through the middle sector there, but with a 35.2, he's definitely got plenty of opportunity to improve. He's about 12 seconds quicker than his previous best lap, so he is finding a significant amount of time. 12 seconds would put him on about a 23. And if he can find similar improvements in the final sector, he may be nipping right around where Space Ghost is, as Space Ghost will not improve on this lap because of that retirement. So he will be stuck on that 21.1 at this stage. Now out of the final corner comes Air Rocks. Crossing the line just about now. Improves to a 21.5, so just a couple of tenths to find there. Coral has improved, found 3/10 on their own best lap. 3/10 would put them right ahead of Gali if they can continue it. Into the final couple of corners they go. And they're looking to find some pace in this one. It looks like Dr. Shizu may have gone very wide through turn 11. But as it stands, it's a Mercedes 1-2 on the timing sheets. Can Coral do anything about it? Air Rocks has lost it through turn 5. Coral improves by 4/10, does go provisionally P2 in this one. Shizu into the pit lane. We will grab Dr. Zados as he is working through the final sector now. Big wiggle coming into that final chicane and just about keeps it under wraps. He's gone 2 personal bests in this one. Is he going to find some more time? Of course, it's 2 personal bests. He has not yet set a valid time. Where is he going to cross the line? 17-18, 18-6. It puts him provisionally P5. We'll grab Dan Gilligan next, who had to lift and did not have a great final or first lap there. Still getting the car settled in as there is a car twitching ahead of him. He sweeps around the outside. Knack Track goes provisionally onto pole position there with a 17.9. First driver into the 17s as we have hit that 5-minute mark where track evolution is going to start. Kicking in significantly. Yeah, most of the remaining Div R drivers that still have no main seat are drivers that can't make any of the races on time. They can only do the Friday sessions. So that is kind of why we are in drivers like Air Rocks and Kane, who are primarily just sticking to Div R. But Dan Gilligan goes up into P8 with his lap, so a good lap from them. We'll see if we can find, I believe Dr. Zados is probably on his way into the pit lane. Yes, indeed. Ruprath is, I believe, on a flyer here. Looking to improve on an 18.8. Into the final sector they go. A quick right-hander just about keeping it inside those track limit lines. very close to the margins is Ruprath, and it looks to be a very, very clean run through the final sector. Do they have the time made up in the first two sectors? Crossing the line, they'll go provisional pole, 17.948. Just a couple of hundredths of a second quicker than the provisional pole sitter before. Knacktrack only less than 4 hundredths of a second made up the difference. Golly is really the next car, the only car on track getting ready to go for a flying lap. They are showing on and out lap at the moment. Just getting the tires warmed up. There are a couple drivers pulling out for the final runs of the session, but Golly will be the first across the line. He's got to hope for no traffic as he gets ready to wind up for that final lap. That invalidation not going to hurt. It's not in the final corner. Slow release-ish off the line. No, he's going to... I think he may have... Yeah, it's invalidated this and the next lap. So, Golly, luckily with enough time, but does he have the fuel? Actually, we'll jump on board. He's showing 2.1 laps of fuel, and he's got to save quite a lot to be able to get all the way around again. Golly might have found himself in a little bit of trouble with that careless mistake. And I don't know that that is going to help him out. I believe furthest around the track is Elliott on the outlap in the Williams. So we'll jump on board. He'll be the first one to start this final round of flying laps in this qualifying session for Divar. Ruprath has called it a day in the pit lane. Happy with his provisional pole time. Not going to get out for another valid lap in this one, but we are on board as Elliott gets ready to wind up for the final run of qualifying here. 1:42 left on the clock. Technically enough time for him to get a lap in and do one more. But he looks to have just about 2 laps of fuel on board. So not quite enough to get an extra lap in following. But Elliott will be the first one into turn 3. Hard on the brakes. It's a little bit of an opened up corner compared to where it was in the past, but there are lots of yellow flags as drivers are just kind of sorting the order out as they work around the lap. So, Husam out of this session has crashed. Has they cut? No, Husam has retired in the pit lane. I think. I'm not sure if I'm being honest. There's some yellow flags. Into turn 9 and 10. Used to be 11 and 12. A little bit of a wiggle. Keeps the back end well under wraps. Zados is out, has crashed through turn 5, and I think he's collected another driver. As it looks like there's an Alpha Tauri stuck up underneath it as well. I think Airrocks has been part of that incident as well. No, that might be a Torre, and that's on the flying lap, so there will be no opportunity for them to improve. So that takes a couple drivers out of the opportunities here, as many drivers making mistakes through turn 5 in this one. Across the line, improves by 7/10, goes up to P7. We will attempt to find who the next actual driver is around the circuit. It is indeed False Tax in the other one. Has yet to set a valid lap time in this one. Time here ticking 110. Oh, the back end is around. He's lost it. Is ghosted, and I believe that is Dr. Shizu who has crossed and gone through. So Shizu finds no real time, just thousandths of a second. Golly has improved by less than a tenth in his first 2 sectors. Does he have a strong final sector to move up the time sheets? No, he does not improve. I believe that Torre is going to be pulling around the corner, and he's had that incident. He is not going to improve. Our end coming through the final corners doesn't look to be improving through these final couple of corners. He's got Coral right on the gearbox. Going to be next across the line. Where does RN go? He does improve up to provisional pole. Coral's going to be next across the line, though. Is he going to find time? No, Coral finds a little bit of time, but not enough to move up. Is Knacktrack going to take pole away? Knacktrack does take pole away in the dying breaths of this qualifying session. Dan Gilligan not finding time on this lap. The real question, Golly has taken the checkered flag, so no improvements for them. And it is just the end of the qualifying session, as there was a quick run of provisional pole times as our end took the time, and then by just 4 hundredths of a second, Knacktrack went again further on top. 2 drivers into the 17.6s, so a very good final bit of qualifying there. But you got Knacktrack taking that pole position with our end sharing the front row. Ruprath is in P3 with Coral in P4 by just 1,000th of a second ahead of Dr. Shizu. Gali stays in 6th on an 18.3. FRS Elliott 18.4 in P7. Zados 18.6 with that crash on a final lap, unable to improve. Dan Gilligan puts it into the top 10. So a good drive from him. We'll continue. Ettore rounds out that top 10. Then you've got Blackbird and Frazier not showing his pace, pulling up before the line, sandbagging, maybe trying to work a little bit to see how the car drives in the pack. And PC Div R is a good testing opportunity for some of these Div 1 drivers. Space Ghost in 13th. Air Rocks, False Tax, Spike, Husam, and Stark all had moments and were unable to improve from their early runs. So lots of drivers crashing out in the qualifying session. What is that going to say when you're carrying around an extra 100 kilos of fuel during this race? So we will just have to wait and see what happens with that one. But an exciting end to that qualifying session. Several drivers crashing out. And of course, a very tight battle for pole position up at the top. So we will wait and hang out for just a second as the drivers get their setups dialed in. Relax for just a moment. And we will get ready to get the 50% distance race here underway here at Australia. 29 laps the race distance in this one. Typically going to be a medium hard or hard medium run, as we saw with the tire life. Soft's only going about 10 laps, and the hard's going a good 25. But you can go on to the medium. Soft medium is possible, though unlikely. The soft tires do degrade very quickly in these situations, so you'll just have to wait and see how they manage. But the timer has been started. The countdown has begun, so we'll grab a look at the pit lane. We'll also silence our one and only David Croft. But it does appear to be a relatively sunny situation here. A little bit of light haze. So we will just have to see if there are any curveballs the weather wants to throw at us as the final drivers are getting loaded onto the grid for this formation lap. Now, as expected, no drivers starting on the soft compounded tires, just mediums and hards up and down the grid. A little mixture here and there. But the soft tire is really not a great option for a race tire. As you can see from the predicted pit stop strategy, it's about 13 to 18 as our drivers usually take it a little deeper into the race. But you don't want to go too far into the race on those mediums. Yeah, the hards will do decently. They are a colder tire, so you can push them. The softs, though, only go good for about 6 to 8 laps. But we will bring the game volume back up and get ready for an interesting start on this one. So we'll keep an eye to see if we can grab, as it looks like one car is kind of teleporting. I think that might have been Dan Gilligan's car. Sort of things you'd usually see on a immersive formation lap. But cars are revving up. On the grid we go. We will see if NACTRAC can get the release. Lights are up. Lights are out. And it looks like lots of wheel spin for our end at the start and a big launch for Dr. Shizu on the outside. He's up into second. Then we've got tons of cars going towards the back. Husam has made contact with False Tax. They are off the track. And there are yellow flags in that first sector. As a lot of movement in the mid-pack side by side. They are going down into turn 3. Ettore moving up into 7th now. Dan Gilligan and Frazier duking it out in the Aston Martins. Dan Gilligan's out the inside for turn 4. Now turn 5, it's the outside. He's got to be careful. Leave some space for his teammate. Now Frazier, with those softer tires on those mediums, does have an opportunity to attack up at the front. Near the front, Coral has had a bit of a wiggle. He was closing up on Elliott, but has seemed to have made a little bit of a mistake. Spike has worked his way past Stark, but the leaders have gotten away from Elliott significantly. NACTRAC, Shizu, our end. All kind of a 3-man breakaway pack at this stage, but the mid-pack is getting very, very spicy. Is anybody going to make it dangerously over the curves? It looks like drivers have survived. Now, Ettore sizing up a move on Gali, goes to the outside. Gali defends, holds position. No movement from those two. Everybody's made it through the turn 9-10 chicane safely this time. which oftentimes can be a little bit of a surprise. Dan Gilligan down just the one spot as it looks like False Tax has had a spin. And now Ettore has got some pressure on their own gearbox. Coral in the slipstream of Elliott, but it seems to be holding relatively steady between the two drivers. A little bit of a look to the inside for Coral. Fraser now starting to look on the inside of Ruprath. Has those medium tires, and he's got a great launch. Ruprath a little bit rumbly over the curbs, and now Fraser is straight through on those medium tires. Dan Gilligan having a look to the inside of turn 3. Just about holds the outside, does Ruprath. It'll continue around the outside of turn 4. Goes Dan. He's got Spike now all over the back of him. Hugh Sam made his way past Stark as Zados and Aerox have traded positions as well a little further down the field. But Dan Gilligan just kind of slipping through. A little bit of a mistake from Ettore, and that is going to allow Fraser through. Dan Gilligan's now trying to close up on the back of the car ahead. Arend and Shizu, the two Mercedes, are getting relatively cozy with each other, as is Coral and Elliott. Well, we are settling down just a little bit in this one. It'll take some mistakes for overtakes to happen, although it looks like Dan Gilligan's got a run. To the inside goes Ruprath, and then back to the racing line, so covers that little inside look from Dan Gilligan relatively well. And now Dan Gilligan just has to settle down. Fraser making his way up the field decently on these opening laps. DRS will be enabled as the leader crosses the start-finish line. Now that run after turn 1 and 2 is detected by the first detection point, so you will not see DRS yet as Fraser sets the fastest lap of the race. Now Fraser closing up on the back of the Alpine of Gali here. Again, no DRS down this because it's detected further ahead. It will be the one down into turn 11 that you will see the first overtaking opportunity. Ruprath and Dan Gilligan is Ettore very wide again, and Dan's just got to try and pick who he's going to follow. Goes to the inside, a little bit of contact between the two. Dan, it keeps it out of the wall, and it just looks like he closed the door a little bit much, and there was just some incidental contact between the two. But we'll jump ahead as Coral is now closing right up on the back. As Elliott's dropped out. No, who's fallen out of the lead? It's now a Mercedes one too. Elliott has, no, Naktrack has spun. Naktrack was in the lead of this race, was he not? Naktrack has dropped to the field. I must have missed that somewhere. And now with the DRS, here comes Coral on Elliott, having a little look, not going to get anything to stick there. And now it's a Mercedes 1-2 up at the front. We'll keep an eye a little further down. Is anybody going to try and make any moves down into turn 11? It looks all line astern. As now the lead pack down the front straight. We haven't seen much from them. Oh, Elliott is out. Elliott's made a mistake. He's retired from this session. He's had a big crash. And that is going to be a virtual safety car. Virtual safety car called, not a full safety car yet. We will see if it gets upgraded, and it has been upgraded. A full safety car has been called. Hugh Sam into the pit lane. He'll be the first driver. Is he coming to fix some damage? We'll see. It looks like just tires. No, new front wing for Hugh Sam. Naktrack also into the pits, and Elliott just too much right foot on the throttle. And into the inside barrier is what happened. So, not sure what happened to Nak. I apparently missed that while keeping an eye on the midfield fight. But we did have Naktrack end up at the back of the line, and Elliott trying to keep ahead of Coral, just a little bit too much throttle. As Coral has picked up a drive-through for speeding under the safety car. He has closed the gap to the leaders a fair bit. I think he may have been running a little ahead of the Delta. Not sure. Could be just a game thing as well. Just kind of trying to eyeball it because now he's dropped back to about 5 seconds. I think he may have just outran the Delta for a little bit, because he had closed to about 1 second. Hugh Sam picking up a time penalty under safety car for track limits warnings. That's not ideal. It's not what you want to do, but this helps out Hugh Sam, Stark, Naktrack, False Tax, anybody who's had damage in the early stages of this race, because the pack is going to get closed up now. Is anybody going to opt for the pit lane? Down the order, it looks like Gali is coming in. And Coral has sped in the pit lane, and I think that's probably going to be him retiring. He's not gotten the message that he's retired, so he is into the pits, but there's going to be a double stack for Gali and Spike. But out of the pit lane comes the Alpines, and they don't really lose any track position. They're onto the hards. As we said, an early safety car, the hards can do 25 laps of green flag racing. And with 5 laps already done in this race, by the time we get going back to green, you really only have about 22, 23 laps left to go. So I think we are just about in the window to get to the end. So we should see drivers that just pitted for the hards be able to get to the end of this race. And as it is around most of the tracks with the hard tires, there's not a whole lot of pace drop-off. They tend to stay pretty stable in lap time through their entirety. It really just comes down to what your initial lap time is and how heavy the car is when you start it. But the field is relatively spread out at this stage, so we still have another lap or two under safety car conditions. As there's a little bit of car placement mixing going, as there's been a little bit of overlap between... No, Space Ghost has gone around. He's had a spin. And I think it's going to tell Hugh Sam to give the position up. So yeah, it should be okay now. But now Space Ghost does have to close back up to the safety car pack. False Tack's the furthest back. He should be able to get in there. We will see Stark, interestingly, on the soft compounded tires. I was just looking to see if maybe he was going to dive into the pits and do a double tire swap. And go on to, because I believe he started on the hard, so he would have to come on to the mediums. It won't get to the end. But so the hard tire runners caught out a little bit by the timing of the safety car. Medium tire runners that stayed out should have still some decent pace. They've got a little bit of a buffer, at least the lead pack does, with Ruprath and Gilligan on hards. But I think at this stage, unless there's another safety car to help them out, which considering the number of crashes we saw in qualifying, it's not unreasonable to guess that there may be another retirement in this race that may trigger another safety car. But as it stands, if it stays green flags the rest of the way, it's probably going to be advantage drivers like Coral, Golly, Spike, Blackbirds, who have made that early pit stop onto the hard compound tires. Safety car is in this lap. We got the control confirmation message, so we will grab our leader. Spike apparently picking up track limits penalties while under safety car conditions. You gotta love it. As Dr. Shisu is going to lead this restart. Mercedes 1-2 at the moment. We'll keep an eye on the telemetry for when he decides to bolt. It is a fairly long front straight and a second dose of DRS or of slipstream available. Not DRS in that situation. As there's contact, Knacktrack and False Tax coming together under safety car conditions, and that is going to be not what you need. Hopefully Knacktrack avoided, or False Tax avoided any kind of damage for it, but Shizu has not yet gone, still waiting, now is ramping up, and there is the full throttle. So, big wiggle from Fraser, though. He's got a Torre all over the back of him in the slipstream. Our end now looking to the inside of his Mercedes teammate. Fraser able to hold off the charging Alpha Tower. He will jump a little further down as Ruprath is under attack now from Dr. Zados. They are both on same age tires but different compounds. There's a yellow flag in the first sector. That is Air Rocks and False Tax is in the pit. Oh no. Yeah, False Tax in the pits. Coral through the pits to serve that drive-through and get it done with. But now Dr. Zados up close to Spike there, as Spike is really pushing, trying to take that position away. And it looks like Spike has made their way through on Zados, as does Blackbird. So Zados falling down the order and losing some serious ground. No, this battle is not done between the two Red Bulls, as Blackbird is slotting back in behind. Stark on Space Ghost, admin v admin in this one, and Stark sweeps around the outside on those soft tires. He's got to make them work, and has got to try and carve through the field at these early stages. Alpine v Alpine, it looks like Spike and Gali are swapping positions around relatively smartly. Knacktrack, another driver pushing hard on this restart, up now to 12th. has also made his way past Space Ghost. Up towards the front, Ruprath and Dan Gilligan are close nose to tail to each other, but Dan Gilligan looks to have gotten a very good run out of the final corner, is making ground on the Alpha Tauri ahead. Not quite enough to make an attacking lunge just yet, but we will see. And wait, Dr. Shizu tucked up behind his Mercedes teammate for the day as Arend leads his way down into turn 3. Further down the order, it looks like battles up and down. We're in essentially one long DRS train as Coral is sped on the way into the pit lane, and another mistake there. But let's see what tires he's going to swap onto. He's making a second stop. Airrock's on the softs. Coral is back onto the mediums he started on, so he will continue on with those mediums. Now the gap's starting to open up, but Ruprath coming around the outside of Dan Gilligan. Can he make the move stick as they head to turn 9-10? Dan Gilligan has the inside, and that is going to settle it. But just for the time being, Zados and Gali as well fighting it out as Blackbird sneaks past Gali as well. So a little bit of wrong-footedness from them. As side by side are Dan Gilligan. Oh, they've touched, and the back end just gets around. I think that's just kind of the wheels sticking together that you get from Codemasters. Unfortunate, as that was a really good battle that was going on. Our end starting to open up a gap to Shizu in P2, and now Frazier on the charge. Our end sets the fastest lap of the race. DRS now enabled. So we will wait and see who is going to take advantage of said DRS and push on in this one. Yeah, Gilligan and Space Ghost, side by side they go. Yellow flags in Sector 1. That is Knack Track off the track, as Gali and Blackbird have made another position swap. It looks like Knack Track still stationary on the side of the track. He just about got it moving again, but from pole position to start this race now is having an absolute nightmare of an event. Frazier now closing up. Shizu has gotten back into the DRS range. Our end had set that fastest lap, maybe overused some of that ERS. But it looks like Shizu is going to be in trouble. Granted, Division 1 against Division 3 driver, so you would expect Frazier to make his way through, but with that rear flap opening up, now around the outside goes Frazier. No, Shizu has the straight line speed Shizu had to hold Frazier off, but a big wiggle on power getting out of that corner, and through goes Frazier. We will see if Shizu is going to have an opportunity to make a re-attack. Arock's out of the session in turn 5, and that is going to be another full safety car called. So, another full safety car. Zados dives into the pit lane and is going to pick up the leaders very quickly this time. So Zados, Stark into the pit. So Stark able to make up some positions on those soft tires. Is going to get back off them. However, field is not spread out all that much. So back under safety car conditions, and now the field not having spread out enough is going to mean that the leaders can't really pit off of those medium tires. They'll have to stay out on them and continue. Stark onto the mediums himself. With 19 laps left to go in the race, the mediums can just about do that distance. So mediums for Stark and Space Ghost could go to the end of this race now. Coral coming into the pit lane. He will serve one of those 5-second penalties, or maybe all of them. We'll see how long he's stationary. Team working on the car. It looks to be a 5-second penalty. So yeah, he served his 5s, now just has the 3-second time penalty for track limits. So he's going to be able to catch up the back of the pack. All of those penalties wiped clean at this point. And so the safety car that Coral needed, he got. How he's got a set of hard tires on. Easily will go to the end of the race. He'd already been using those mediums, so he can't take those on to the end. Now Stark is on the right compound, I think, at this point, at least as far as where the timing is. However, we'll see if any of the drivers at the lead pack opt to take the pit stop. It's really not as much worth it at this stage, unless none of the other lead pack comes in. Looks like Hussein and Zados are overlapping a bit, and they should not be doing so. And into the pit lane comes Frazier, so he is going to opt for that pit lane, as does Shizu, Ruprat, and Attore. So a couple of the lead pack come in, not all of them. Our end out in the lead of this race on 10-lap-old medium tires. Ruprath on 10-lap-old hard tires. Spike, Gali, Blackbird now make up your top 5. Stark on those new medium tires now into the top 6. And does not have to make another pit stop to the end of this race. Now, Shizu Ettore onto the hard tires. Dan Gilligan onto the mediums. Can get to the end as well. So it could get interesting by the end of this one. Naktrack in the pit lane, serving his 5 seconds and making a change of tire on back onto the hard compounds. And the field should get relatively bunched up by this coming up stage. So we will wait and see if we are going to have one more lap under safety car conditions or if we are going to get back to green flag racing. The biggest gainers, Spike up 13 places, Stark up 12. Naktrack, of course, having the toughest day of all, down 15. From pole position to last man running at this stage, just the 2 retirements. Elliott on the exit of turn 14 and Airrocks on the exit of turn 5. Both kind of solo on throttle spins, it would appear. Didn't see Airrocks's, did see Elliott's. But other big gainers, Hugh Sam up 10 positions, and surprisingly through it all, the only man who has not changed position from the start is Dr. Zados, P8 to P8 at this stage. But our end up a position, Ruprath up a position, and our end in the Mercedes leading this race. The only 2 drivers yet to stop, though, are our end and Ruprath. Safety car is indeed in this lap a late call, so our end is going to have to back the pack up significantly for this restart just to let that safety car get away. And I don't know that they've done enough. Most drivers have had a chance to do enough warming of the tires. So we'll wait and see if there are any mistakes down in the pack on the restart. Still is not yet gone. Waiting to send it to green. Still holding. Still holding. Now he's gone. So he waited very late on the straight, and that has caused a mess on it. I'm trying to grab somebody in the middle of the pack, and they are fanning out 4 or 5 wide down into turn 1. That is a clever move. He is allowed to wait all the way to the start finish line to do the restart, and has managed to catch out his rivals a bit. Spike making his way past Ruprath, Blackbird and Stark down into turn 3. They go. Stark with those medium tires around the outside completes that move. Space Ghost dropping down the order has gone off track in turn 3. There may have been an incident there. Didn't really get a chance to see it. Now Frazier, I think, got caught up in the melee of the restart. Of course, dropping to the back of the field under safety car conditions, and now down into 14th, as it looks like Space Ghost may have some damage. Seems to be moving relatively slowly. We'll jump back up towards the front as Ruprath is getting another run up on Spike. There's another retirement. False Tax is out through turn 3. Depending on where his car is stopped, it hasn't called any kind of safety car or VSC yet. No, full safety car. So they have called it, and once again, we will go back to safety car conditions, as it looked like just a kind of a solo mistake by False Tax in turn 3. I don't think there was anybody around them, but unsure. Didn't get a chance to see what happened. But we're back under safety car conditions. Into the pit lane comes our end and Ruprath, as you would expect, although they are really going to be feeling the pain, as now Spike up 15 places into P1. Golly, so you've got an Alpine 1-2 now. Stark, though, up into 3rd on the best set of tires, the softest and youngest at this stage for him. Our end and Ruprath are going to cycle out in 12th and 13th. At this stage. Now, we were getting into the pit window of the medium tires, however, with a couple of safety cars adding up to about 5 or 6 safety car laps. Those mediums could have gone probably close to lap 17, 18, but at this point, you just take your medicine. It hasn't paid off, and you are right towards the back of the field. Frazier on 10-lap-old mediums. Not the ideal strat. He's got to probably come in for the pit lanes once again. Space Ghost onto softs. I think he may do a double dose of a pit lane stop. But as far as track limits goes, a few of them picked up thus far already. Spike with 3, Hugh Sam, Ettore, and Coral with 3 second time penalties each. We're creeping up on the halfway mark of this race. We've had 3 now solo retirements in this one. And RN did well to restart this race in a fashion that caught out the rest of the pack. Yeah, I say earlier in the races, the safety car will wait for the pack to bunch up. It really only does the quick release if it is running out of green flag laps in the race, usually the last couple of laps. Otherwise, it almost always waits. Unless you've done like a double pit stop, it'll almost always wait for the pack to close fully up. You'll see, does Fraser dip into the pit lanes? It looks like because he's going past Ruprath and Arendt, he is indeed going for that double pit stop. So grabbing another set of tires, should be on to the hards for the end for the rest of this race. And indeed onto the hard tires he goes. Space Ghost also into the pit lane on those soft compounded tires. So he was just using those to cycle the tires as well. Now this is a situation where the safety car may not wait for Space Ghost to catch all the way back up. We will have to wait and see. It was a fairly late call last time in. Waited until the last couple of corners, but we've got Spike now leading from Gali, Stark, Blackbird, Husam, Dan Gilligan up into 6th on a good set of medium tires there. Zados in 7th, Latore in 8th, Coral in 9th, Naktrack 10th, Dr. Shizu 11th, Arend in 12th, so the Mercedes once again together lying astern. Ruprath in 13th, Fraser is down in 14th, and Space Ghost onto a set of medium tires to go to the end. Should just about do it with those 3 laps of wear in them. In 15th, your last man running of the 18 that started today's race. So we'll keep an eye up on the top of the screen, see if we do indeed get the safety car in this lap message. Looks like we may be one more lap under safety car. Did come in, call it in right about here. Coral? Coral is out? What happened to Coral? What happened to Coral? I need to get eyes. Coral is into the barriers? Interesting. Not sure what happened there. But Coral's into the barriers, and safety car is still out. So, fascinating. I'm not sure what particularly happened. But we are, this should be the last lap under safety car. As the field is bunched back up. Don't know if maybe Coral was trying to warm the tires or what, but he was into the barriers, and an already difficult day is now concluded early. So unfortunate for Coral there. Sad to see it happen. And we are getting red flag, so there is an issue. Looks like we are a red flag in the race. Let me see if I can find out why we have the red flag. The safety car has been called in. Trying to figure out what's going on. It looks like Coral has got a decent issue. All right, so yeah, it will be at this stage, since we are, should be just a 25% distance race. So I'm going to, while we sort this out, take us back to the hold screen. See, this is what happens when you try and use your arrows when you've got nothing going on. All right. troubles in the Divar race today. And let me just pull up the regulations. It was a very strange retirement for Coral. Okay. So we're on 15 of... We're just past the halfway point, so it'll be 25%. Give me a moment while I have to grab screenshots for the grid. Apologies for the red flag. It's been a while since we've had one, actually. Surprisingly. I think our last red flag was actually in Xbox. So, let me find... Okay. Nope, I need so many folders. I don't know if it'll be Alpine 1-2 because the desync happened under this safety car, which I think would mean the last uninterrupted lap would be before the safety car was called. Stand by, because it should go back to last green flag lap. If I'm not mistaken. Okay. Let me get back into the new lobby. Okay, so we're getting things sorted out. Apologies. Okay, I'm in the lobby again. Okay, so we're getting the grid set. So unfortunately, we've had the nasty D word show up, the D sync. But it is what it is. Sometimes it happens. But we've not had that in a little while. Okay, so grid is getting set. I'm just going to take a quick gander. Just do a sanity check on the settings. Good. Those are all good. 5% race distance, no qualifying, custom grid. Grid is being edited. Clear weather, because we had clear weather for the race fully. And corner cutting, safety car, broadcast formation, realistic non-reduced standard hard, maybe surface car. Okay, so settings are all good to go. So we will just hang out. And we are getting everybody readied up. We're ready to rock and roll. Unfortunate for the guys who had made that pit stop. It's kind of a bummer. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate for those who took this, who waited for the safety car, or had the lead essentially after the safety car, but you have to kind of take, for red flags, you got to take it from the last racing lap. Like same as if there was a red flag in a real F1 race. If there's a big crash, it goes back to, and you do like 2 laps under safety car, and then they throw a red flag like, oh, we got to repair the barriers. It does still go back to the last uninterrupted laps. So, people are getting ready to rock and roll once again. We're getting loaded in. We just kind of hang out and wait for the players. They are on. They're getting their setups loaded. There will be another broadcast formation lap. And we are waiting for players, which is good. It's good. We will give you the pit lane. Clear weather as expected. As with a 25% distance race restart use, we custom set the weather back to the current whatever the original race weather was. If it's a early red flag, like first 10%, I think it actually goes to back to random if there's not any racing laps done. But countdown clock is going. I've already pre-muted old Mr. Croft. Now with a 25% distance race, you will see faster tire degradation. They still have to make a required pit stop, does every driver. It is still bound by those rules. So softs and mediums will be the tires of the day choice. Just make sure that's all good. Okay, all good. But we likely won't see the hard tire all that much in this race. It is a comfortable soft medium or medium soft in the 25% distance races. However, those softs are going to fall off very quickly as the deg is much quicker. Okay, so we'll bring the game audio back on up. And we will get ready for the race to restart. Our drivers on the grid. Lights are coming on. 5 red lights are up. A long hold. And there go the lights. And another big bout of wheel spin for our end. He comes all the way across the track to cover Spike. But Spike has the momentum and the run and is going to go around the outside. Our end, though, down to the inside. In contact between Spike and Gali. That is 2 Alpines coming together. And Gali sorted right back to the end by his own teammate. Came across and just nudged Gali. It looks like contact between them. Dan Gilligan looks like he is dicing with Fraser as Ettore is cycling down. Gilligan having to run over that curbing and having to lift out. Naktrack is beyond Ettore, though Ettore getting that second run back as they head down into the next complex of corners. No move being done there. Now Ruprath, Arendt, Spike split by just mere tenths of a second, dueling for position, and Dan Gilligan has got the specter of Fraser on his gearbox as well. We'll actually check in with them as Fraser on the softer tires is going to go up the inside into the chicane. Dan Gilligan hanging it out. Looks like they managed to navigate it without any contact, and Fraser is finally through. Elliott now pressuring Dan Gilligan, Spike and Ruprath side by side. In the background, you're going to see Elliott and Dan Gilligan continue to go. A little bit of contact between the two as Elliott's trying to use those soft tires, but Dan Gilligan swings to the racing line and covers off the soft shod Williams, at least for now. But Dan Gilligan really struggling on this start of this race, is being shuffled down the field, has already lost time to his teammate by a massive margin, and now is pressing. I wonder if Dan Gilligan didn't get an opportunity to get his setup in. He's going much slower than he was. Oh, contact! Dan Gilligan into the barriers. He had a big moment there. Looks like a small touch between Naktrack and Dan Gilligan, and he's into the walls with some wing damage now. Ruprath has fallen behind Hugh Sam up at the front, who is now starting to try and track down the race leaders. But now Arend and Spike, who have shared the track in previous seasons. And away we go. So we will see if Spike, they've shared it in Division 1 a couple of seasons ago. False Tax and Elliott both working their way around. Naktrack actually looked to have had a bit of a moment as they worked down the long straight. Of course, it is a huge, long, kind of winding straight. And Fraser now working past Blackbird as well. DRS will be enabled as the leaders cross the start-finish line. Naktrack in the slipstream, having a little look to the inside. But now Fraser has got that job done. Dan Gilligan falling further down as he's got that wing damage, is going to have to come into the pits this lap. It's seemed like an eternity for the Aston Martin driver, but now he's got to find his way. Hussein into the pits, so he's going to come in early, get rid of those tires. As around is, it looks like, who is that? There's a Torre? Is that a Torre who's gone around? Somebody was facing the wrong way in the middle of the track. No, that was Knack Track facing the wrong way in the middle of the track, and now Spike and our end are getting relatively cozy with each other. So one Aston Martin Alfa Romeo into the pit lane. And then also is spinning Knack Track. Fraser and Dr. Zados now is Fraser now really showing some pace, picking through. Stark has had a spin around turn 5. Has he hit the barriers? He's got to wait for the other cars to come through. We'll keep an eye and see when he spins around. He has lost his entire front wing. So that is about job done in such a short race. Safety cars are still enabled. So if there is a retirement, we may get the field bunched back up. But with only 15 laps to go in this race, or total in this one, it is going to be quite the effort. Spike, Ruprath, our end, all very close to each other. Our end is going to be in a lot of trouble. Spike into the pit lane, so he's going to get off those soft tires immediately and go longer on the mediums now. Ruprath with the DRS on our end sets the fastest lap of the race, not able to make the close up. Fraser also not able to cover Dr. Zados, but he will get that second dose of DRS as they head down to turn 3 in the slipstream. Looks outside, switches it inside. On the brakes is Fraser. Trying to sweep around the outside is Dr. Zados. Side by side, they'll go through turn 4. Just about enough space. Fraser, though, has the inside for turn 5 and gets the job done and is up into the podium places now, though still has to make a pit stop in this one. Elliott and Coral are close on track. 4/10 splitting the two drivers as Stark into the pit lane will be able to make that wing change and get a new tire on. And it looks like Shizu has gone around, so he is into the barriers. He's not retired. He's in the session still. Once the other drivers filter past, we will do a quick checkup. But it is up at the front here. Our end and Ruprath, our end, covering the inside aggressively. Still leaves the space for Ruprath. Maybe a little bit of late. Oh, and too much throttle for Ruprath. Around he goes. And that is Ruprath out of the contention for the race win now. We'll keep an eye now on the Coral and Elliott battle, still holding steady. Zados holding within the DRS range of Fraser, who has about 2 seconds to catch up to our end. Ruprath into the pit lane just ahead of this battle. And now is Zados going to try and make a move on Fraser up at the front. Coral not close enough to make a move just yet. Zados burning lots of battery to stay with the Division 1 driver. DRS appears for Elliott as well, as he was within the range for with Ruprath. So he has managed to stay ahead via the DRS, and Fraser just stretching outside of that DRS range of Dr. Zados now. So it's a Red Bull 3-4, right? It could be turned into a duel for the podium place between those two, though. Granted, I think Blackbird is Div 3 and Zados is Div 2. No, Blackbird is Div 2. I think these are the two Div 2 teammates in Red Bull. Forgive me. But definitely a tough one for them. False Tax making hay while the sun shines. He was the retirement that brought out the red flag, but since you go back to the last green flag lap, and, well, he's back in the race. We did give everybody the chance to rejoin, actually, all of the retirements, so they're all back in the race, but False Tax up into the top 5 now for drivers that have not made the stop, and Husam is out. Husam, it looks like, has tangled with Spike. Spike facing the wrong way. That is a full retirement and only local yellows. No safety car VSC. So it continues to be green flag racing as Fraser, False Tax, Golly all into the pit lane now. You would expect some of the drivers to be making their first stops here, but we're about half of the field has made the stop. Golly, Knack Track as well into the pit lane now. And it is still Coral and Elliott who are duking it out. Coral starting on those medium tires, Elliott on the soft, so Coral will have some pace at the tail end of this race once he does make that swap on to those softs, and he is hanging well with the soft shod Elliott just ahead of him. Two drivers that challenged for the Division 2 championship last season. Of course, Coral leading the Division 2 championship this season. But in the slipstream, and You do get quite a lot of slipstream. It is not an ideal overtaking opportunity here, though. Turns 9 and 10. You really have to make it stick and have a compliant driver to race with. And oh, a little bit of contact, as it looked like Elliott was a little bit wide. Coral tried to check up, and there was just a slight touch on the rear. And that is Elliott around, and Coral will make that place through. But just a little overeager, maybe, was Coral in that situation. And now Space Ghost and Fraser are through. And it looks like Arend and Dr. Zados both pulling into the pit lane, just keeping Stark from going a lap down. Now it looks like Elliott having some trouble in the last sector there, turn 11, as he's made some mistakes. There's some local yellows, but what could have been a really good overtaking attempt into turn 11, that contact just kept it from happening. Now Coral on the medium tires, and Ettore side by side are Fraser and Dr. Zados, and Fraser has undercut, or no, Dr. Zados has nearly undercut or overcut Fraser. It was very nip and tuck, but Zados does have to get those tires up to temperature, and now so does Arend, and Fraser is pressing hard. So the one lap undercut has eaten about a second of gap into Arend, and now Arend with cold tires is going to have to do quite a lot of work to try and keep Fraser behind. Here comes Fraser. He's going to have DRS on Arend. Arend does move fairly aggressively to defend his position. Goes to the inside very early, but now side by side, not quite any space for Fraser to go around the outside. Wasn't alongside enough to be granted that space. Allows Arend to go all the way to the track limits. Spike with 3 seconds of time penalties, as is Gali. So Alpine's the only one making up some creative track limits so far in this sprint race. But now Fraser's going to have another crack at trying to attack Arend with the DRS. Not a huge gain under that, but it's all about this exit through turn 2. If you can manage a good exit out of turn 2, you have the opportunity to attack in turn 3, and it looks like Fraser might have it just about handled for now. Space Ghost looks like it has spin through turn 2, but Fraser really putting the screws to Arend now as they work through this middle sector. I believe Fraser might be carrying a bit more downforce than Arend. The straight line gains on the straights and DRS are not as big as you'd expect for Fraser, but he does make up time in the corners quite a bit. It's relatively cozy out in the front, and Fraser's sizing up a look on the Mercedes. I think he's going to be smart. He's going to lift out, stay back for the DRS, and he is literally nose to tail with the Mercedes this time through the chicane, using that downforce. And now with the slipstream, with the DRS, he's going to go straight to the racing line. Can he go around the outside this time? Side by side they go. It looks like a little wiggle from Arend. Maybe a little bit of that car magnetism, and now Arend's got Dr. Zados to contend with, who is pressing quite hard. But Arend's got that good straight line speed. If he can stay within the DRS range of Fraser, he might have an opportunity for a re-attack. That rear wing flips open on the Mercedes. Down the front straight they go, and you can see just how much he's gaining. Not quite as much as he needs, but it is enough to at least hold Zados off, and now is going to have a second opportunity as Coral has picked up 3 seconds of time penalties. Blackbird also picking up now 6 seconds of time penalties. So quick penalties for the Red Bull driver is going to be a bit of a pain here in this shortened 25% format. Lap 9 of 15 at this stage here. A few drivers still yet to make their stops. Ettore, Coral, and Space Ghost all yet to make their pit stops. They started on the mediums. Will have the softs for the final run of laps. Let's get actually the right thing there. There we go. And this is still your closest battle on track. Arend, Fraser, Dr. Zados, all relatively close to each other. The only battle within a second of them all. And Fraser is starting to nip into the lead of Ettore, who is falling back a little bit from Coral. It's a little bit of both. As long as he's got clean air on the front wings, he may not be able to run away from Arend quite yet, but he is going to start getting himself into the DRS of Ettore. And oh, that's Coral. I think Coral has had a spin out of the final couple of corners. Coral has gone around, has to now wait for the entire field and try and find a slot to dart across the track. So Coral is going to take to the pit lane at this stage. That is going to give Ettore the lead, and Fraser only 1.2 seconds now back of the AlphaTauri. And Coral with another speeding in the pit lane penalty, not quite getting the car slowed down. A small mistake there, and it's had big repercussions, that spin and the speeding penalty. But Fraser is in the DRS window of Ettore now. He would actually probably like it if Ettore stayed out a lap and made our end work to overtake him. But I think we saw Coral come in. Space Ghost is still on the track. He has not made his pit stop. Ettore, the only other driver not to make a pit stop yet. Now Coral carrying 8 seconds worth of time penalties, has 2 seconds to catch up to Knacktrack, who is now actually within fighting distance of Space Ghost, and actually we'll catch it now as Knacktrack goes down the inside and is able to scythe his way past the McLaren, and now is going to have to try and get a move on to get away, as now Fraser overtaking down into turn 11. And our end is not quite going to be able to follow him through. That was kind of the hope for our end, would be to follow Ettore through, or Fraser through. Now down lunging the inside is our end, and that's put Ettore off his footing. Dr. Zados is going to follow through. Ettore still on track, so he's not opting for that pit lane. Space Ghost has had a spin through the turn 9-10 chicane, and now it is going to be a dogfight up at the front. No penalties for either of the drivers, all three of them, or 4, as Ettore is going to have to drop out of this as he makes his pit stop. Gap to the pack, it is about a 19 second pit time loss. Ettore is going to come out just about somewhere around the points, maybe behind Coral. It's going to be tough, but he is going to go onto those soft tires, and Dr. Zados now through on Coral, or Ettore. No, Dr. Zados attempting to go through on Ettore has had a spin through turn 5. It looks like he's managed to keep it out of the barriers. No apparent damage. So now it turns into a 2-horse race up front. RN doing well to hang on to the back of Fraser here. Has not let the Aston Martin run away from him out in the front. So as he comes through the chicane, and it looks like just that bit of extra downforce that Fraser is carrying is enough to get him an advantage. There are mostly high downforce corners before the DRS zones on this track. Of course, you've got turn 14 is an accelerating zone. Your 4th, 5th gear climbing through there. Same with turn 2. So you do have some aero dependency as you enter your major overtaking zones. And you can see Fraser just stretches that gap by a tenth and a half. Ettore is into the pits on their way into the DRS zones. RN able to make up some time on the straights. But once again, aero dependent corner loses about a half a tenth, down to about 4.3 tenths now, and our end once again going to close it back up to about 3.5 tenths. So the back and forth, the yo-yoing continues. Coral is now closed up to Knacktrack. Unsurprisingly, sets the fast lap. Oh, there's a car coming out of the pit lanes. That is Ettore right on the racing line, and that is Knacktrack having to take a big avoiding action. Coral is going to sneak through. Has DRS, is going to go around the outside of Ettore, but that was just a tough time, as you know, Ettore is for position. He's allowed to be on the racing line. It's up to the drivers overtaking to make the overtake safely, and that's false tax around. Ghosted, but spinning himself around there. It could be an illegal overtake. I think avoiding action may have bought him a little bit of help, but it was Knacktrack that went off the track. I don't think Coral went fully off the track, because Knacktrack was ahead. He arrived at Ettore first. I think Coral actually may have picked his way around the outside and not gone off the track, because Knacktrack cut across the apex, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to watch it back. It all happened very quickly, as Dan Gilligan and False Tax now dueling it out. False Tax a little bit wide on the exit of turn 11. Dan Gilligan now trying to work his way. 7 seconds to catch up to the points paying positions, but that's not going to help him. Blackbird is out, has had a crash on the exit of turn 2. Dan Gilligan into the pit lane. No, False Tax in the pit lane. Blackbird is out. No safety car has been called. It's lap 13, so you won't get a safety car. We are behind that safe category, essentially. Spike is dropping down the order. Spike has had a solo spin, it would appear. Now out of the points. Dan Gilligan closing up to that points-paying position. If he can get Spike as he's getting back up to speed, Dan Gilligan may score a point today. Sweeps through, does the Alfa Romeo, and he's up into 9th now as the battle's still tight between Arend and Fraser up front. Coral and Attore still doing their job. Gully driving a nice quiet race in the top 5. So we'll keep an eye on Attore and Coral. Naktrack back up to speed is going to start closing down on this group as well. But lap 14 of 15, so 2 laps left to go in this race. And we will see if Arend is going to have any kind of... Arend appears to be burning quite a lot of battery. Rear light flashing. So I think Fraser has managed to stay ahead without burning too much of that overtake battery. It's still going to be close. It's going to take kind of a last lap gasp for Arend to make the move. Although it was P2 for him behind the nearly Division 1 champion-elect would be a very, very strong Div R result for Arend here. Spike, Elliott, Dan Gilligan all kind of bundled up a little bit further back. We'll keep an eye on them as they work, as their deltas, as they work their way through. But this is the closest battle on track. It's been rare this season that the closest battle on track has indeed been for the race win, but it is indeed for the race win. And Arend just not quite able to close enough under DRS. I think he's just about not got the battery necessary to make a move stick. We are about to see the final runs. It is a decent run down this DRS straight until you hit the start-finish line. Maybe if you can get right up on the gearbox out of the final corner, you can have a chance. But Arend 8/10 back. False tax with some track limits penalties. 3 seconds for him. Coral and Gully both carrying time penalties as well. How much is it? It'll be 3 seconds for Gully, 3 plus a 5 for Coral, so that will drop him down the order. Not quite all the way to Dan Gilligan, but it will lose him down to about P8. But it is getting tight between Dan Gilligan and Spike. Dan Gilligan doesn't need to hold off Spike. We'll actually take a look at that. Dan Gilligan just needs to not let Spike get 3 seconds in this last lap. And it's still a P9 for Dan. Spike with another 3-second time penalty. So Dan Gilligan now with 6, and Spike just apparently giving up. He's just either given up or had a wheel failure because he just swung off the track. But now Dan Gilligan does have Elliott on his gearbox, and Elliott does not have any time penalties. So the buffer zone of Spike between Dan and Elliott is completely gone. And now we will just have to see what's going on. But as we come to it, the leaders working through the final couple of corners now. Attore has made his way past Coral. Coral is going slowly. Coral is going slowly now. What has happened to Coral? Naktrack is through as well. Across the line is Fraser to take the race win. Arend comes home second. Ruprath picks up a P3 in this one. Dr. Zados, 4th place. Gali will come home once again, very quiet 5th. Driven a very solid race. 3 seconds of time penalties, but well ahead of Attore here. Elliott has managed to get past Dan Gilligan. Dan Gilligan trying to go for one more gasp, maybe. It's a straight line fight here, but still points for the Aston Martin at the end of this one. Coral is relatively safe time-wise. No, Elliott will jump him. Dan Gilligan slow out of that corner. Dan Gilligan up into 9th. And then you got Spike, False Tax, and Dr. Shizu to round it out, as False Tax doing a little bit of Valtteri Bottas grass cutting. And he actually, I believe, will fall behind Dr. Shizu because of that. The 3-second, he's crashed out. He's not crossed the start-finish line. False Tax did not cross the start-finish line. He did not make the end of this race. I think he maybe thought the start-finish line was a little further up the track than it was, but did not make it to the very end. Fraser takes home the driver of the day. Expected did sandbag a bit in qualifying, but managed to survive some incidents and the red flag, and it managed to survive the duel with Arend at the end. Just about had it in his back pocket, the 10th he needed, but it was still within a second for the race win, and Fraser comes home on the top step of the podium. So a good day for him, wearing some different colors. There's Maya Fraser doing his hop and a skip and a jump to the top step of the podium. RN in P2 and MML Ruprath in the Haas comes home in third place. So a very strong result for them. Of course, this is much like whose line it is in. Anyway, the games are made up and the points don't matter. That's not true. The games are regulated by our main rules still, but the points don't matter as much. But your running order: Fraser, RN, Ruprath, Dr. Zados, Gali, Tori, Naktrek, Elliott, Dan Gilligan, and Coral rounding out the top 10. Spike, Dr. Shizu, False Tax, Space Ghost. Then you got Blackbird, Stark, and Hugh Sam rounding it out. False Tax did cross the line, or not cross the line. He nearly crossed the line with the fastest lap, but since he was out of the points, will not score any bonus fastest lap points. But thank you all for joining once again as PC Div R, as usual, kicks off the race weekend. And did not fail to disappoint. Lots of crashes in qualifying, surprisingly so. And some a red flag in the actual race. So that was fun. But we are back in action again tomorrow. We are, as usual, Xbox and PC Division 1 going off first on Saturday, 7 p.m. UTC on FRS Motorsports for PC Div 1 and FRS Community for Xbox Div 1. Then immediately after that, depending on which channel is available and open, we'll keep an eye out for PC Division 4. They will go off they typically go off at about 8:30 UTC. Of course, I rush myself as quickly as I can from the Xbox race up to PC Div 4 to broadcast that for you all as well. And then Sunday, back in action, 7 p.m. UTC as usual. You'll have PlayStation Division 1 and PC Division 3 on FRS Motorsports and FRS Community, respectively. And we will wrap it up with, as usual, myself and Herring Sword on PC Division 2. Should be on FRS Motorsports unless the Motorsports stream race goes very long, in which case we will go on Community. So it is once again one of those whichever one is ready and willing. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for watching the stream again today. Hope you all enjoyed the racing. I will see you all tomorrow. But y'all have a great day. Peace.